everybody, welcome back. My name is Prince and you're listening to the episode 9 of the Get Better Together podcast. Today we're going to talk about bad habits, how to get rid of them and how to replace them with good habits. And I have with me a guest on this podcast with whom I'm doing my first interview. He's going to share his expert advice on the subject of building habits. He's a psychologist from Netherlands who actually understands the science behind habits. His name is Marco Sanders. I'm really excited about this interview, so let's jump right into it. Hey Marco, welcome to the Get Better Together podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really excited talking about habits today.
Yeah, I also think it's wonderful to have the chance to ask a psychologist questions about habits, which is also a subject of my liking. But before we start, do you want to tell the listeners about, a little bit about yourself, where you're from and what you do? And so just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Marco Sander. I'm from Germany. I'm actually quite young. I'm 24 years old. And I studied psychology, though, in the Netherlands at the Maastricht University. I did my bachelor and master there. And I'm also having a YouTube channel called Straight Mind. And when I look back, I always realize from the beginning on, I always loved talking about bad habits. I gave online courses about that, also workshops and seminars and coachings. And I really love habit coaching. Sometimes it can be even more powerful than life coaching, because life coaching sometimes is like a little switch that you maybe fall back into, and habits is really about something sustainable and really gives you great results in the long run. So I really love focusing on that recently.
Okay. So is this habits predominantly that you've studied in psychology?
Generally, I did my bachelor of psychology and master of psychology. And my master was specifically focusing on behavioral change. We had an entire course called Bad Habits and how to overcome resistance and regulate yourself optimally. And I really found myself be very interested in that. And I also got some great results with people I talked to, because there are some powerful tricks that you can use depending on your situation. And it makes it easier to build a habit, because it takes willpower a little bit to take a habit, to change a habit, but also you can use some strategy which makes it easier.
Okay. So the way we want to do this podcast, Marco, thank you, first of all, for introducing yourself. You're 24 years old. You're 5 years younger to me, actually. You've got masters in psychology at 24. Wow. That's incredible, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think from the moment we start our day till we sleep, we're led by habits. We wake up, we eat, we do, whatever work we do, we keep moving, from one place to another. We talk to certain people, we spend time with certain people. So everything that we do is led by habits. But that's not precisely what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about just the bad habits. But before we do, I think it'd be good to get a little bit of perspective from you. You've studied psychology. So what is habit? How do you explain habit to somebody? Because to me, everything that we do is a habit of a sort. Would you agree?
Depends. I think there are two types of behavior we have. The one is goal-oriented, which is not a habit. You really have to think about it and put effort into it and be like, okay, this is now my plan, and now I'm going to the supermarket. This is not a habit. And a habit, though, is something that you do frequently, and it comes naturally, and it already feels weird if you don't do this anymore. And a key definition here is also that a habit is always triggered by something. So, for example, a negative habit would be you slack off on YouTube and then you spend 2 hours there watching some stupid videos and you're like, hey, they're cool, but I didn't want to spend 2 hours now. Well, this was triggered by something. And maybe something would be if I'm alone in my room and bored, then I go on YouTube. So I think this is a crucial part here of the definition of a bad habit, that it's always triggered by something. And we can talk about this later also, use this information and to introduce a great strategy. So if you want to build, for example, a meditation habit, don't just say, yeah, I meditate every day at some point. Say, after waking up, I meditate, or after coming home from work, I meditate. So you put a trigger in there, which triggers the habit.
Okay. And do you think habits are very important when it comes to leading a successful life?
Yeah, I think for sure. People actually tend to overestimate what they can do in one day. And then they get maybe a little bit disappointed after the day because they didn't do everything. But people greatly underestimate what they can do within a year. Imagine you work focusedly on one project, for example, for half an hour every day in 365 days. Where will you be? People have really huge struggle with getting this into their head and wrapping their mind around that. Somehow we're still struggling with really perceiving time persistently. So habits really get you to a certain place you've never been before. There's this nice quote saying, motivation gets you going and habits keep you going. So I think it's very powerful to install some basic habits and then also some specific ones depending on your life situation.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that you spend maybe 30 minutes on developing a certain habit every day. It doesn't mean as much for that particular day, but if you do it continuously for 365 days, you will have formed
Yeah.
a great habit, or maybe you would have built something over a period of time. But how do people get the discipline to devote that 30 minutes on that particular habit? Because I think I've been finding the answer to that question for a number of years,
Yeah.
that you know what you want to do, the habits that you should have, or the habits that you shouldn't have. That's not really something that you have to tell people about. So if somebody is a chain smoker, they know they're a chain smoker, and they even accept that this is their vulnerability. But as humans, I think we still fail at breaking those bad habits and adopting the new ones, the good ones. So I just want to ask you this question: that what is the simplest and the most realistic way to get rid of bad habits? And how does one spend that half an hour that you're talking about continuously building a certain habit?
Yeah. So first of all, what you previously said is that sometimes it's hard to find this discipline over a long period of time. I found it that a lot of people have this limiting belief of being successful is hard work, and I always need to struggle if I want to be successful. But you can actually also thrive in life, and it comes easy to you. And I found this after I built some powerful habits that people are like, Marco, how am you? Why are you motivated all day long so much? And I was like, I'm actually not. It's a habit. I just naturally do this by now. So I think you can really thrive through life this way. And to your last question, how to get rid of a bad habit, this here it's actually really important to get into the psychology, because a lot of people, they just try to push it away and use this willpower and say, okay, I'm not smoking now anymore. And they push it away. There's so much pain, and they actually get over it and they don't smoke anymore. But studies have shown that after like 6, 7, 8 months, usually people either backlash to the same habit or they do something similarly bad. So maybe if you smoke before, you start overeating. So it's also something through your mouth or so. So what we need to understand, that bad habits are nothing that your body tells to just do because he wants to annoy you. No, there's a reason behind that. I don't know. It's very dependent on the individual. Maybe you smoke because you're stressed and you don't have the right coping mechanisms to deal with stress, right? So then you just smoke, and this helps you to deal with stress. By just pushing away the smoking, you still have tons of stress that you don't deal with healthily, and your body looks for another strategy. So the best way is to substitute a habit. So you say, okay, I'm not smoking anymore, but which good habit could I install instead, which is also dealing with my stress? Oh, maybe it's going to the gym regularly. Maybe this helps me now to then also deal with my stress. So there's always this homeostasis level, this stable line that you need to keep the balance, right? And if you don't have the balance, maybe you're super stressed, your body finds ways to release it, but usually it can be a bad habit, and you want to consciously substitute it in a good habit and keep your balance. Is that understandable?
Yes, it is. But I also have a follow up question on this. So
Mm-hmm.
you say that if somebody is smoking, it's not really just because I didn't have anything else to do, so I just went out and smoked. And there's got to
Mm-hmm.
be an underlying reason behind that. Maybe that person's stressed, or maybe something's happening behind the scenes, and that's causing that bad habit. But I think there is
Mm-hmm.
more to it. Obviously, if you're stressed out, then and you're a smoker, then that makes you want to smoke. What about laziness? What about,
Mm-hmm.
so I remember that I've previously been addicted to consuming content on social media. I remember nights when I literally binge watched
Yeah.
Money Heist on Netflix, like for literally straight 6 hours.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, I uninstalled Netflix because I regretted that decision. But then, and I wasn't stressed out or anything. I didn't even have a bad day at work or nothing that could have been called an underlying reason behind me watching
Yeah.
Netflix. But then I still felt in the morning that I wasted an incredible amount of my time. So how do you deal with those habits where that stem from nothing but laziness, where you just don't have the motivation
Hmm.
to stop it, or just to break it altogether, or just do
Hmm.
something else which is more productive?
Yeah. So, first of all, you could go here into depth and ask yourself truly what triggered that. Was it a feeling of loneliness, of less energy? And then substitute that and, for example, realize, okay, if I'm chilling all day long in my room, then this happens. But I think, secondly, what is really key here, that a lot of people, they have a hard time visualizing where they want to get, or what they're currently doing, where does it lead them. So people lacking a little bit of this awareness. And this is key here again, because a habit is all about no awareness, right? You do it kind of subconsciously, which is great. It can save energy and time, right? If you have good habits installed, you just do this, don't need to think about it when you dress yourself in the morning, for example. But if you start becoming aware of your negative habits, you also realize where they lead you. So what I'm doing with my clients here often is a visualization. So I tell them, hey, close your eyes. Imagine what you did today, for example, binge watching for 3-4 hours, the series. Imagine you do this now every day for the next week, for the next month, the next year. And imagine, where are you then? How do you feel? Because you know you're not supposed to do that. You put yourself down. How much knowledge do you have? How much do you thrive through life? And now imagine you would still do that bad habit in 10 years, in 20 years. And I'm really doing this visualization for like 5 minutes. And then we turn this around and we visualize, how would it be if you would stop doing that, instead going to the gym and reading a book for an hour every day? Where would you be in 10 years, in 20 years? How knowledgeable you would be, how healthy and fit, what kind of people you would drag into their lives. So I think a lot of people, they suffer from laziness because they don't have the vision and they're not part of something that they found meaningful and important. And yeah, as I understood it right, you're not binge watching every day now, or quite often serious. And I feel like you found something that is meaningful to you and you're more thriving in life.
Yeah, because I realize this. I read about this stuff quite often. I'm watching these self development videos on the phone. I'm reading books. I have a number of books that I read on self improvement. So I have that realization that I sometimes end up spending time where I shouldn't be spending time. I have that understanding, but I still end up doing it.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
we
people
all have.
who don't even who are not even there yet, who don't even realize that what they're doing is wasting an incredible amount of time, which they will regret maybe a few years later. So I didn't really plan on
Yeah,
asking this
yeah.
question, but I'll just ask you.
Hey, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a friend at work, and so I'm going back to the smoking example that we used earlier. So I have a friend at work, a team
Hmm.
member, to be honest, and he wants to quit smoking. He wants to quit it. He's a
Hmm.
chain smoker. He smokes like 10 to 12 cigarettes every day.
Wow.
And I don't believe that it's what his body demands, it's his habit. So he gets to work and then he needs to smoke. He has his lunch, then he needs to smoke. He goes on a break, then he needs to smoke, and before he goes back home he needs to smoke. So
Hmm.
it's like he's gone into this cycle that he feels that he has to follow every day. So what advice would
Yeah.
you give?
I think stopping directly is a little bit too bold. As I said in the beginning, motivation gets you going, and people have a lot of pain at some point and they want to really directly stop it, but it's unrealistic on the long run because you want to build a habit and it takes time. And your brain is actually wired differently. Your brain always changes. And if you smoke for a while so much, it really takes some time to rewire that. So I would say baby step it. And what I actually found very interesting, which I read also in my master, quite some studies about smoking. And for example, those fear appealing pictures. I'm not sure whether you also have them in India. On all the cigarette packages, they're like fear appealing pictures of like people dying from smoking or whatever. Do you also have that?
Yes, we do have that on the cigarette packets.
It doesn't work actually.
it doesn't work.
Exactly. Studies have shown that.
People don't really need to look at the packet to smoke. It hasn't worked. So the
Yeah.
cigarette companies do it because it's an obligation from the government, but it doesn't seem to be slowing people down from
Yeah.
smoking.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because some people then just resist and say like, oh, this is just stupid. What are they telling me? I smoke anyway. And a lot of people, they already say like, hey, I want to stop smoking. For example, your coworker. And studies have shown that just having this attitude of like, I want to stop smoking is actually not the most important factor to do this. Most people are lacking perceived control, which just means that they don't believe that they can stop. Maybe they tried before and it's so hard, and they don't truly believe that it's normal or that they can do that. So what I advise this friend is really to surround himself, for example, with people, or talk with people, interview people who actually stopped smoking, maybe hanging around more with people who don't smoke, and somehow really gain this perspective and this belief that, hey, I think I'm willing to do this. Because a lot of people are really falling short here and like on the control. And it's not about what you want, but what you believe yourself to do, your behavioral expectation, what you expect yourself to do. You could also raise this with accountability. So, for example, tell this to your friends what you're going to do now. Maybe even make a competition and say, okay, every cigarette I'm smoking, I'm donating a couple of bucks to an organization or so, which holds yourself more accountable, and you're more expecting yourself to actually get over it. But I think especially smoking is really, it's a journey and it's really hard. And I have a lot of respect for people who actually get over it. And it does take willpower. So I would say do it step by step and not just directly switch from 12 to 0 cigarettes. Because then you get disencouraged again. And then you again say, oh, I know I can't do this. And then your perceived control again lowers.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds like a practical advice. So I think eventually you recognize that bad habits somehow interrupt your life, and they kind of stop you from accomplishing your goals. They jeopardize your health, both mentally as well as physically, and they waste incredible amount of time and energy as well. But at the end, people still do them.
Mhm.
And here goes my last question to you, Marco. If someone was to go down the path of developing good habits, then what
Mhm.
as per what you read in psychology are the two mental and two physical habits for any individual to develop that will take them down the good habits path?
Yeah, I think there are really quite some general habits that you should adopt. You can really generalize that and say, hey, this is a good point. Physically, I would say it's definitely having some sort of exercising habit, maybe going for a run, maybe going to the gym, maybe playing some sport, some team sports, anything, exercising. And the second one is get your nutrition straight, eat healthy habitually. Of course, just once in a while you can eat some fast food or whatever, but just it's about the habit, most of the time eat healthy. And mentally, it's really meditation. It's really changed my life. I'm so much more in ease going through life. I'm so much more focused. And secondly, taking time on your own. Go for a walk, maybe journal, and really try to reflect. We get so much input nowadays, and it's hard to shut down the outer voices and just listen to what is coming from within, because there's so much creativity. So it's meditation, taking time on your own, exercising, and get your nutrition straight. And then I would say some specific habits depending on you. For example, before I started YouTube, built the habit of shooting a video with my cell phone every week and talking in front of the camera, so I get used to the camera and I'm a better speaker in front of the camera. So this was something specific to me because I wanted to start with YouTube, right? What is your specific habit? Where do you want to go? What are your goals? And then build those specific habits.
Yeah, I think those are really good tips, Marco. Really great. I don't really have any more questions to ask you.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward as it is that bad habits. It starts with recognizing what they are, what's the underlying cause, and then replacing them with good habits. But before we end this episode, I want you to tell the listeners how they can find you, because I'm going to upload this on YouTube as well. Yeah, tell people how can they find you on YouTube or Instagram or any other social media channel.
Yeah, I think my most important platform is really YouTube. It's called Straight Mind, and you can check it out there. And from there on, you can also get to my website, straight-mind.com, and you can even book one-on-one coachings. I have free calls for everybody in the very beginning. So we start making a strategical plan, and then we decide whether we would like to work together or not. Yeah, I think those are the most important channels: YouTube and my website, Straight Mind. And yeah, in the end, I would just like to say that nobody's perfect. It takes time to build habits. I'm also struggling. I'm not just deciding today I'm switching something and then it perfectly goes. There are always backlashes, and it's just important to reflect on, okay, why did this happen? How can I improve? It's a journey, really. It sounds so classical, but really life is a journey, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think it's a message to everybody who's listening to this, that if you break bad habits, then you kind of become an entirely new person. And the truth is that you already have it in you, be someone who can break those bad habits. You don't need to quit smoking. You just need to return to being a non-smoker.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, Marco, this has been such a pleasure. And I'm so grateful for having spent the last 20-25 minutes talking with you. This is my first interview, and, I've loved it.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Bye.